All right, everybody, it's been a while. I'm a little rusty on this thing. I haven't been on in what, a month or two? Well, anyways, I'm back. I'm ready to talk about stuff. Let's go. Where's my thing? Sorry. What's going on? It's the morning afternoon live. Oh, what happened to my music? Hey, I'm back. Whatever. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, wherever you're located. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Renee in the house. Oh, what the hell? I'm back. I'm ready to talk about some movies, box office, news, everything related to pop culture. Hey, everybody. It's been a minute. I think the last time I was live was back in September, I think it was. I don't know. I'm sure some of you will remember. I don't know if anyone's going to even show up. Maybe everyone has forgotten about me by now. But I haven't been streaming because I've been really busy. This time of year is usually my busiest time, especially September, October-ish, because that's when New York Film Festival starts. So I'm usually there 2 weeks, maybe even 3 out of the entire month of September, October, if you combine the two. It's also the ending of comic book convention season. So really shortly after New York Film Festival, I was at New York Comic Con. This time I was working at the show. For those of you who have been following me on socials and members of the channel have seen like my personal blogs of where I've gone. I'll just say it this way. From September through end of October, I was everywhere. So September started off briefly with New York Film Festival. Then I went to Baltimore for Baltimore Comic Con. Then I came back to go back to New York Film Festival and then New York Comic Con after that. And then a week after that ended, Rhode Island Comic Con. So I was all over the place. And I've been trying my best to really keep up with the channel, uploading videos. I have so much content I want to put up there, especially because of my experiences and what I saw at New York Film Festival. I have a lot of thoughts on the movies that were shown there. My times at these conventions, I wanted to do a quick video on that. Some experiences that I went to, some of which you've already seen now on the channel, but there's other things that I have not yet produced content for. It's just a lot. And because I've been running around all over the place, I felt like I was hardly home in the month of October, which is true. I wasn't. I was physically and mentally exhausted. I was completely spent. And because of that, I did not have it in me to do anything on YouTube. I tried. And you know, I've worked on a lot of things. I've edited some things. I just haven't finished them yet. But I was just mentally exhausted and I needed a break, you know. So that's why this is the first time that I streamed in so long. Well, one, because of scheduling, and two, because after all of that was done and my schedule finally calmed down, my brain was just mush, you know, and I still needed to do other work and my side projects and, you know, things that are actually making me money, because, you know, YouTube is not exactly the one doing that for me at the moment. So of course I had to have some reserve mental capacity to do all those other things. Plus, not to mention, I'm still in the process of trying to move from here, which is very slowly happening. And it's going to be a major focus of mine for the next month and a half, all the way through the end of the year. And I'll be like, you know, chronicling all of that stuff, you know, setting up the new space that will be my new quote unquote studio, my new living place and all that. And, you know, I'll share some of that stuff on the channel with all of you as well, so that you know exactly what I've been going through. But yeah, it's been crazy. I wasn't expecting to be this bombarded with stuff to do. Everything just kind of fell all together at once and just all collapsed on me. So I do apologize for not being available for streaming. I had a chance to speak to some of you outside, some on Instagram, some on, other socials. And I know some of you were asking, where have you been? Are you coming back to live? When are you coming back to live? All of that. So I was thinking of doing it last week. But then again, like I was just so busy with all these other things I had to do that I just couldn't. I just didn't have the capacity to do it. So I made a post on the channel stating that from now until the foreseeable future, I will be going live once a week. Every Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the time that I'm going to be back live. And that's the only time I'll be doing live every week. I need time to do other things. I need time to finish up things I need to get done by the end of the year. And I need to go back to producing actual content on the channel. I've made some promises to some studios about some reviews that are very late. And I just, I feel bad about that. So I need to catch up on all those things. I need to recap all the stuff I saw at New York Film Festival. Plus, it's the end of the year. I have some end of the year lists I need to work on. Award season is slowly starting big time. I just found out that the Oscars are in March, which I feel like it's earlier than usual. I feel like they usually have it in April. So that means announcements of nominees will probably come by the end of January, early February. So it's going to be a very short turnaround to get ready for all of that Oscar talk stuff. So yeah, just a lot of stuff to prep for towards the end of the year, plus some other content that I've been planning out and plotting behind the scenes and all that. So yeah, so I hope you guys can understand that, but at least I'll be here once a week. You know exactly when I'm going to be here. So get ready, get prepared, set some time aside. And of course, as always, if you can't make it to the live, that's no big deal. It's going to be available for you to watch later on and all that. So AKB, nice to see you here in the chat. Yes, I am back. Thank you so much for welcoming me back. Xerxes666, I don't know if you're still here. I liked your comment in regards to The Rock. Well, he had a good run, right? He did, actually, if you look at the box office. I mean, before I get into that, let me just quickly go over what I'm going to be talking about in today's show. So obviously, like always on Mondays, I like to talk about weekend box office. We'll talk about the latest new movies that came out, especially Red One, starring The Rock. And this is one of the reasons why I want to talk about The Rock today. Performing not so great, but it did somewhat beat expectations, but the expectations weren't that great to begin with. So we'll be talking about that, talking about The Rock stuff. And the major topic of today is Star Wars. Star Wars. There's a lot of movement on Star Wars movie news. A lot of things that Lucasfilm and Disney don't seem to know or can agree on. And some schedule changes and shifts and new directions and all those things. So we're going to be talking about that today. And if there's time, we'll go over any other kind of new news that came out. So all of those good things, love to talk. But yeah, I mean, speaking about The Rock, for the longest time, he was kind of like the box office savior for a lot of studios. It's like for the longest time, a lot of studios thought like, hey, if we put The Rock into our franchise, it's going to reinvigorate our franchise. And for a while, it kind of did. Look what happened with the Fast and Furious franchise. For a while, even though it does make decent box office numbers, it was getting to the point where it was very stagnant, right? But the minute they included The Rock in there, bam, the franchise exploded once again, right? You have stuff like the Jumanji franchise, who no one ever thought that would continue on after the original back in the 80s or early 90s, the Robin Williams movie. Bring it back, you put The Rock in there, along with, Kevin Hart and, Jack Black and some great supporting characters, and boom, all of a sudden you have a reinvigorated franchise. And then you have all of these action movies that he starred in, everything from San Andreas to freaking Skyscraper or whatever that movie is, where he's like hanging off the side of a damn building. You have Rampage. You know, no one ever thought we would see a Rampage movie based on the arcade game, but there he was fighting up against giant lizards with a freaking giant monkey as his friend. And then, of course, you had the Disney ride come to life. What is that? The adventure ride. What the hell? Jungle Cruise, right? Which I fell asleep during because I thought it was boring as fuck. But that made decent movies, decent money at the box office. But I feel like after that, that's when things start slowly creeping down. And if you look at the history, and which we'll do here, the box office numbers show and paint a very interesting story that I think people got smarter during the pandemic on how to spend their money and what movies to go watch in the theaters, because everything that The Rock has put out in theaters post pandemic hasn't been that great. Yeah, and I think people are probably just like, oh, this is going to be your usual nonsensical action flair. I'll just wait to watch it at home. And I feel like that's the majority of what people have been trying to do or have been planning to do. But like I said, we'll go into all that breakdown and all that stuff as we talk about the weekend box office. So let's do that now. Let's get into that portion of the show where I talk about the weekend box office. Weekend box office. That's right. Weekend box office time. Coming at ya. Sexy time. No, not sexy time. What am I talking about? What are you talking about? I don't know. Where are you? I don't know where I am. I'm here. Are you here? Are you there? There you are. I see you. Okay. Coffee is always so good. All right. So let me share my screen right here. I'm on thenumbers.com, the website I always use when I talk about weekend box office and all that. And yes, Red One is indeed number one at the weekend box office, pulling in $34 million. Now, I just saw a report. Let me refresh this. Just before I went live, that they lowered this estimate to 32 million. So I don't know if they have adjusted their numbers yet. Nothing yet. So 32, 34, it's within that range for domestic box office numbers for Red One. Of course, Red One is a movie starring The Rock, Chris Evans. You have J. Jonah Jameson. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. J.K. Simmons, that's his name. Santa Claus is missing, and The Rock and Chris Evans are there to go look for him and freaking save him and all that stuff. Jester is in the building. What's going on, Jester? Why did Nightbot slap you for? What the hell is that for? I don't know why that happened. I don't know why you got a warning, but that's not true. Ignore that. If something happens, I'll figure it out. I don't know what's going on. I haven't been live for a while, so I don't know. But anyway, yeah, the premise is simple. I feel like it's stuff that we've seen happen before in like different types of, situations. Maybe it's not Santa that got kidnapped. Maybe it's the Easter Bunny, or maybe it's the turkey at Thanksgiving, and or maybe it's that search for that elusive toy for the holidays and all that stuff. So whatever the case is, it's not a new premise, in my opinion. New actors involved in it and all that. But 32 to 34 million. However, the budget on this film, get ready. Are you ready? $250 million. So that's not good. That's not good at all. Now, Red One, I don't know if its international box office is fully in yet, but as of right now, $50 million internationally. 84 million worldwide so far. This is not boding well for The Rock at the box office once again. And like I said, we'll go through his more recent box office tally so you could kind of see the difference. Kevin Davis. Sorry. Again, it's been a while, but always a pleasure seeing you. I love our conversations about box office predictions and all that. Kevin Davis saying The Rock will come back with Moana 2. I do agree with that, but I don't think it's because of The Rock. It's because people just like Moana. Kids love Moana. Kids love the music. So I wouldn't give all the credit to Rock for that. Gladiator 2 and Wicked will be a moderate success, 400 to 600 million. I don't know. I think Gladiator 2 has a bigger chance of being more successful than that. It's already released internationally, and it's already pulled in $87 million just for one weekend already. So that has potential to do big numbers. I think Wicked, with some of the buzz that I'm hearing in some of the premieres and some people are talking about it, I fully believe that a lot of the theater going people is going to be supporting this movie 1000%. You're going to have a lot of those people coming out. It's coming out, what's it, next weekend? Just in time for, oh no, it's coming out this week. Gladiator and Wicked's coming out this weekend. Proper timing for the holidays. All the families are going to be together. Thanksgiving is one of those times that a lot of people love going to the movies as a family. So I do think that Wicked, especially internationally, is going to do extremely well. I won't be surprised if we hear those two talked about at the end of the year as far as major box office pulls for the end of the week. Mufasa the Lion King is going to make money. Unfortunately, it is. I don't know if it's going to be a good movie. I was not a fan of the last one, but that has potential. And Disney knows what they're doing. So I think, once again, the timing of the releases for these movies is perfect because of the holidays and all that. Kevin Davis also says Sonic 3 will be moderate success for Paramount Pictures. I think that's going to be a pretty decent success for them. The second one did better than the first one, or no, slightly lesser than the first one. I don't know off the top of my head, but look, when I saw the second one, I didn't personally like it, but every kid in the audience loved it, and they all went nuts and bananas when they saw the big reveal of Shadow at the post credits at the end. So I think that movie is going to do really well when it comes out, but mainly because of the kid audience going out for it. AKB saying, yikes, don't see it's meeting its budget back. It's going to be tough, man. Because I'll tell you this, word of mouth on this movie is not great. Speaking about Red One, the critics have panned this movie left and right. One person said, this is not the way to start off and kick off the holiday season. So I think word of mouth is not going to help with this movie. I think everyone who wanted to see this movie has seen it this past weekend, and that's it. I don't think, with all the big movies like Gladiator, Wicked coming out this weekend, it's going to have very tough competition. It has no chance in beating those two movies. So I think it's going to see nothing but dips. I won't be surprised if we get to see a 65% or more drop next weekend as far as box office numbers are concerned because of the two major movies coming out this week. Jester, I don't know. Wicked doesn't look like that good of a movie. It may not be, but if it does hit those proper notes as far as the music is concerned, it's the music that made the play. You know, when I saw the musical, I was like, this music is fantastic. The performances really helped carry it over the top. The set design was also great. You know, the whole thing about when she was like floating in the air and she's doing the whole Defying Gravity song. That was the big moneymaker moment in that musical. If they hit that moment in this movie and it touches the hearts of people watching it, then I bet you everyone's going to say, like, you got to watch this movie. Plus, I think a lot of people are forgetting that this is a two-parter. So I won't be surprised if they end the movie on that note, just like how the musical went into intermission after that was done. So I think it's going to surprise a lot of people, probably. And it's going to make people hungry for the next chapter of, or the continuation of that. So who knows? I still personally think it doesn't look that good either. But I've been proven wrong in the past. So we'll see what happens. Jester also asking, what is my opinion on Saturday Night? I loved it. I haven't had a chance to talk about it because I saw it during New York Film Festival. It wasn't part of the festival, but an early screening was presented to me during the festival, so I went to see it around that time. And I loved it. I'm also a big SNL fan, especially old school SNL. I remember watching the old shows on Nick at Night, when Nick at Night and cable was a thing back then. And they used to show all the old SNL episodes. And I remember watching that cast together and how I loved that cast. I was really shocked at how well they portrayed a lot of the cast members. The guy who played Chevy Chase was brilliant. Garrett Morris, the guy who played Garrett Morris, everyone was great. Everyone who portrayed the characters were fantastic. What was also great to see was a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that I've heard rumors about and I've heard stories about. Them not being able to put Billy Crystal on when he was supposed to be on the first episode. All the like crazy shifting around and interference with the network and the doubts that were put on by the network. It's one of those great frantic comedies that we don't really get to see a lot of. Kind of reminds me of like the Christopher Guest movies, like Spinal Tap, Best in Show, all those things. It was just really, really fun, like frenetic energy, and I really enjoyed it. So for me, I think it was very well done and worth a watch, especially if you're a fan of SNL or if you're a fan of those type of comedies that lead you through a crazy, chaotic journey that all supposed to happen in just one moment. I thought it was really, really well done. So I highly recommend it. Jester, I don't know if you had a chance to see it yet or if you were planning to see it, but let me know. Kevin Davis is back again. Do you think Agatha All Along gets renewed for season 2? So I'll say this. I have not had a chance to watch the series at all yet. I'm so behind because of my crazy schedule in the last couple of months. I haven't watched Agatha yet. I haven't watched The Penguin yet. Dune Prophecy just came out yesterday. Cobra Kai, the final part of this. Oh no, is this the final part or is this part 2 of the final season? Regardless, that's now out on Netflix. So I have a lot to catch up on. However, I'll say this, based off everything I heard from people who watch Agatha, the reception, the viewership numbers that have grown tremendously when the season was progressing. I think the last couple of episodes of Agatha got more views than its debut episodes. So that means word of mouth was spreading that this is a good movie a good series to watch. So I will say that I do think Agatha has a good shot at getting a season 2. Kevin Davis, Lucasfilm focus on Skeleton Crew and/or season 2. The Mandalorian and Grogu film is a good thing. Yes and no. We'll talk about more Star Wars stuff later on. A lot of changes in their planning and scheduling. They just dropped the movie they had slated for 2026, and there's a lot of focus on Rey. So I have a lot of thoughts on that stuff. So that's going to be one of the main topics we'll be talking about later on in the show. Jester, I'm also debating with my family on the best Christmas movie. In my personal opinion, it is the Santa Claus one. That's a good one. I haven't seen that in a long time. I made a video several years ago about my top 5 Christmas movies. These are just my personal favorites. So if you want to check it out, you can check it out on the channel. But right now, I'll say that some of my favorite Christmas movies, obviously, Home Alone, the original Home Alone, is always a good hit. I'm a big Gremlins fan. I think Gremlins is one of the best Christmas/horror comedy movies that they've ever made, that's ever been made. So I put that up there. Let's see what Scrooged, Bill Murray's take on the whole Ebenezer Scrooge story. I think that was a very well done movie. What else did I have in my top 5 list? Christmas Story, of course, is a classic. You get to watch that anytime on TNT or TBS if you have cable. They do their 24-hour stream of showing of that. Santa Claus one is a good one too. I will say that is a very good one. I personally love the movie called The Ref with Dennis Leary, and unfortunately the now canceled what's his name? The guy that was in American Beauty and Usual Suspects. Kevin Spacey, and he was in Seven too. I thought that was a really smart dark comedy for a Christmas movie. I don't know if it will still hold well if you watch it today, knowing, of course, about the whole Kevin Spacey of it all. But that's like another personal favorite of mine. So there you go. That's just some of the stuff that we have there. But let's get back on topic now. Talk about the box office. So coming in number 2 is Venom: The Last Dance, dropping from number 1 from last week, dropping 54%, pulling in $7.3 million domestically. So far, the overall gross domestically is $127.6 million. Internationally, however, this thing has been doing gangbusters. Look at that, $308.5 million internationally. so far with an overall take of 436.1 million. I knew this movie would do well internationally because history shows that it always does well internationally. Domestically, I'm still surprised people love this franchise. I saw it and I thought it was ridiculous. It it felt boring. It felt very bland. Um, I didn't care anymore for the two main characters. I honestly didn't, and I felt like the movie ended very abruptly, you know. And they introduced some new characters in there, but I felt in a way they were kind of like throwaway characters. I don't know where they're going to go with this franchise moving forward. But the whole thing with this whole null villain, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but what a letdown. You know, if you are like a major Venom fan from the comics, and again, going to these conventions lately, like I've been going to, a lot of people, there are a lot of huge Venom fans, comic book fans. And the big buzz was no, 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 big villain, badass villain, supposed to be on the level of like a Doctor Doom or like a Thanos level type of villain. You wouldn't believe it watching this movie, not one bit. So I don't know, but anyway, it's still in number two. It's struggling in like grasping on to any dollars it can get. But for me personally, it was a bullshit movie. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars on Letterboxd. It was just really badly done. The only reason why I got 2 stars is because you know, Tom Hardy, he acts his ass off in these movies. You know, it may not be great movies, but his performances is still like above and beyond what probably another actor would put into it. So I gotta always give him credit for that stuff. Going back to the chat, Jester saying my mom really likes this little old Christmas movie called Smoky Mountain Christmas. I've heard of that. If you could remind me who stars in it, then I'll definitely remember. But I've heard of that movie. AKB Best Christmas Movie, Die Hard 1. Absolutely. That is actually also part of my top 5. I can't believe I forgot about that, but I will always agree that Die Hard 1 is one of the best Christmas action movies you could ever get. It's called The Last Dance, so isn't it the last movie? It's the last movie in the Venom trilogy that they have here, but they may have Venom or Venom side character that was introduced in said Venom Last Dance movie progress in another movie somewhere down the line. Plus, we have to also keep in mind that the symbiote, part of the symbiote, does exist in the MCU because he left it behind before he got zapped back into his universe. So there's still a potential that the MCU can also use a Venom character in their MCU if they ever choose to do so. If your mind hasn't been freaking scrambled yet, just wait until the future reveals itself, and we'll see what happens online. Dolly Parton's in it. Yes, I remember the VHS cover. I used to see it at the rental stores all the time. Smoky Mountain Christmas, and she'll be on it, you know, with her Dolly Parton's pose and all that. I remember that movie. Never seen it, but I'm sure there's a lot of fans of that movie from back in the day. Speaking of Christmas, in third place, we have the best Christmas pageant ever from Lionsgate. This is one of those faith-based holiday movies that came out. These usually do pretty well. They're usually done on very low budgets. These movies feel very hallmarky. So that pulled in 5.2 million at the domestic box office, 19.8 million overall so far. Coming in fourth place, we have Heretic from A24, latest horror movie from A24 starring Hugh Grant, which I haven't seen yet. I want to see it. I'm planning to see it this week finally. I've heard decent stuff about it. I just love this new these new years of Hugh Grant's career and how he's you know, pursuing his acting and what roles he's taking on. So I love to see that. So I can't wait to check it out. So far, it's still doing pretty well. 5.1 million domestically, 20.4 million overall domestically. I don't know if it's had any international flair. Very little. I'm not surprised. So 25.4 million overall worldwide. A24 movies are usually done in a lower budget, so I'm sure this movie is doing pretty decently for itself. The Wild Robot, the animated movie with Lupita Nyong'o, which is already available on was that premium video on demand. So I'm surprised it's still making decent box office numbers, but it is 4.2 million, 137.6 million domestically so far overall, with a worldwide box office of 308.8 million. I have not seen this movie yet either. Any movie that's come out basically within the last 2 months, I haven't had a chance to see, mainly because of my busy schedule that kind of came out of nowhere. But I'm slowly going to be catching up starting this week. So, Smile 2, the sequel to Smile, duh, of course, from Paramount Pictures, 2.9 million overall from this weekend, 65.6 million domestically so far, worldwide, 131.8 million. I've heard very mixed things about this movie. I thought the first Smile was surprisingly good, you know, and this is coming from someone who doesn't always watch a lot of horror movies, but I'm getting myself more into that. And I thought this first Smile was decently done. Smile 2, I'm thinking of seeing it, but I'm not sure. But I've heard a lot of mixed stuff about it. Coming in 7, we have Conclave, the great. I saw this movie and it's brilliant. It's just imagine political drama, but in the Vatican and in religion, and it's fantastic. You have Ray Fiennes. You have it's such a star-studded cast from Focus Features. I when this movie was about to come out and I saw the cast involved, I kind of knew. I was like, hey, wait a minute, this looks like a movie I really want to see. Because you have, like I said, you have hold on, Ray Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, and Isabella Rossellini, which a lot of people were talking about her possibly getting supporting actress nominations during award season. I don't know about that. I think that's going a little bit too far. I just don't think she had much to do in the movie, but when she was on screen, it was very good to see her. But it was such a well done movie. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars after I saw it. I took 1 star away, mainly because the ending was a little bit over the top for me. I thought when they added a certain thing to the end, I thought, wait a minute, you guys are going a little bit too crazy with this whole thing. But I thought it was very intriguing throughout. It was very suspenseful, very anxiety driven, very, very good political drama, and in a very old school fashion way too. I don't think I never felt like we got a good political drama like we used to have back in the day. So I thought this was very well done. 2.8 million over the weekends, 26.5 million domestically so far. This has not seen much of an international release. So I am curious if they would ever consider pushing it further out internationally to see how well it would do. Maybe because of its subject matter, it may not do as well. Anytime you touch anything like within the Vatican and Catholic religion, and they do touch a lot of kind of questionable topics here, it is very interesting to see how international audiences react to all that stuff. So that is coming in 7th. Hello, Love Again. I have not heard of this movie at all. What is this movie? Debuting in 8th place. Catherine Bernardo and Alden Richards. It's a film by, I have no idea what this movie is. I really don't. But hey, congratulations for breaking into the top 10 on your debut. $2.3 million domestically, 2.3 so far because it just came out. In 9th place, you have A Real Pain with Jesse Eisenberg and the Culkin brother there. What's his name? Kieran Culkin. I had a chance to see a screening of this during New York Film Festival, and I have to say it is very well done. This may end up being one of my top 10 favorite movies of the year. Domestically over the weekend, $2.3 million, $3 million overall so far. It only just got pushed out to more theaters this past weekend. You could see the change in theater allocation there. So it hasn't really had a full nationwide rollout for this movie, but if you have a chance to see it, if it's playing in a theater near you, I highly recommend it. Very well done. The chemistry between the two is fantastic. And if you're a fan of Succession, the kind of chaotic personality and energy that Kieran had in that show does carry over into this. I hope he never gets typecasted too much because of that type of personality trait of his that he can do so well. But it does work really well in this type of movie, and it's one of those like kind of journey movie where you have two characters that are trying to rekindle their relationship after a long absence, and they are journeying to a specific thing that they both have close bonds with, and it's almost like they are relearning about themselves, and they're in specific moments of their life, and it's a kind of like a, is there such a thing as a middle-aged coming of age movie? Because I feel like it's like one of those, and it's just so well done, and the acting between the two is just so good. Their chemistry is top notch, and someone we haven't seen in a very long time in anything, Jennifer Grey, is in this movie. If you remember her, Miss Dirty Dancing herself, and also the sister of Ferris Bueller. It was nice to see her back on the screen again. So that was a very nice, delightful movie to watch. And running out the top 10, my favorite movie of the year so far. I saw this at New York Film Festival and I fell in love with it immediately. Anora from Neon Pictures, 1.7 million over the weekend, 10.4 million domestically so far. I don't think this has seen much of an international release yet. A little bit. 9.8 million, 20.3 million. This is the movie by Sean Baker. And this may be his best movie he's ever done so far. I mean, there's so much to love about this movie. On Letterboxd, the way I kind of described it is a modern day pretty woman for the first half, and then turned into a Safdie Brothers movie for the second half, where it's just like nonstop chaos, chasing. You are gripping the sides of your seat. Your heart's palpitating because you're filled with anxiety. You don't know what's gonna happen. What's going on here? Where are they going? Why is this person getting punched? Oh my God. Chaos ensued. But it's such a well done, brilliantly acted movie, well written, well directed. And yeah, like I said, one of my favorite movie of the year so far. Number one, 5 out of 5. I gave it on Letterboxd. And it hasn't really seen a really broad nationwide release yet for this, but pay attention. Come award season, which is slowly starting to happen, you're going to hear a lot about this movie moving forward. So that's basically the weekend box office there. And to stay on the subject of The Rock, here is a look at his box office breakdown. But before I get into this, Jester saying every decade has a genre of film to match it. And I'm going ahead and saying that the genre of the 2020s is horror. I will definitely agree with you there. This is something that I've mentioned earlier in a previous stream. I forgot exactly when I did it. But I do feel like, and I think you have the pandemic to really thank for this. You are seeing a slew of horror movies releasing every year since, I would even say probably since like the end of 2019 going into 2020. And there are many reasons why that is, because horror movies are very easy to make. You have people like Blumhouse to really thank for a lot of that stuff, where they found a way to really do horror movies in such a small budget with really quick turnarounds, right? You have a lot of creative people now involved in doing a lot of horror movies and all that. A24 has found a way to turn horror movies into a unique film going experience where it's not always about the slasher, the killer, or the gruesomeness, or the gore porn type horrors. It's more the thinking horrors. It's more the stuff that stays with you for weeks on end as you think about, well, why did that happen? Or what does this mean? Or what's that symbolism and all that? You have A24 to thank for a lot of that stuff. And every year, there are new horror movies that force the audience to think more. Yeah, we still get our slashers like Terrifier, which I heard wasn't so great for a lot of people. We still get the gore porn stuff every now and then. We're also getting into that weird genre, or that weird moment where now that some properties are public domain, you have people turning those into horror movies now, like the Winnie the Poohs, the Pinocchios that are coming out, the Steamboat Willie that is now on Peacock. They did a horror film for that, and that's going to continue more and more so, whenever now that people have more access to these like public domain type characters. So there's a lot of interesting things to do. And the one thing I always said is that there are two guarantees at the box office whenever you have this type of movie coming out. If your movie is a faith-based religious type movie, your movie will do really well at the box office. Why? Because you have a lot of people who are very devoted to their religion, and they will go out and support those type of movies. And number two is horror. The horror audiences, the people who are fans of horror movies, are diehard fans. They will go watch any horror movie they can. Even if they don't hear good stuff about it, they'll still go out and see it, because horror movies at a movie theater is a very fun time for most people. It's like a great date movie if two people are into horror movies. It's a great way to get some scares and chills in there, maybe get a little closer, snuggle up against each other, and then something to have conversations about after the fact, right? Um, those are always going to be the two genre movies that are going to do extremely well at the box office, no matter what. I would even add in there animation and anything that's family oriented, because if you have kids, like I have a lot of friends who have kids, especially young ones, they are always looking for something new to bring them to get them out of the house, to get away from the doldrums of being stuck inside, get into a movie theater, have them run around, watch this crazy movie or what have you. A lot of theaters are now doing these family friendly movie screenings where you could have your kids running around and the sound is not too loud and blah, 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 this and that. And it's a great way for people to interact with movies, especially like animated movies and all. So those are always going to be the ones that do extremely well at the box office. But yeah, I would say in recent years, it's especially within the 20s decade that we're in right now, we are seeing a whole slew of new horror movies. And it's not going to stop anytime soon because, like I said, they're easier to make nowadays. There is a certain sweet formula that people can have figured out, that they can do things on a very tight budget. And a lot of filmmakers and writers are being more creative with their stuff. But if you're going to have studios like Blumhouse and A24, even to a certain extent, Neon, they were I think it was Neon who put out Longlegs this year, which still for me, it's one of the most terrifying movies of the year, because it lingers with you for so long after the fact. So I will agree that the 20s decade has definitely been the decade of the horror film, the horror genre. It almost feels like how it was like back in the 80s when the 80s horror dominated for so long, but so did comedy. And I feel like going into the 90s, that's when action really took over. And then nowadays, look, we hardly get any real good comedy movies out there. Action and sci-fi and all like those type of things are reserved now for the blockbuster movies, your MCUs, your whatever. Dramas will always be there, but that's more like your Oscar baity type stuff. So it is interesting to see like how things have shifted through the years. But horror will be horror, and horror will do their horror things. So I definitely agree with that. But moving on to box office for The Rock, Mr. Dwayne Johnson. So, like we said, we have Red One, 84 million worldwide on the budget of $250 million. Pretty disappointing. If I was a studio right now, I'd be like, what the fuck? What did we just do? Fast X, he only showed up in the post credits of Fast X. So I'm not even going to include this because he was in the movie for like 2 minutes. If it was 2 minutes. Yes, Fast X did really well, but Fast and Furious will always do well, especially internationally. This is the movie I wanted to do. Black Adam. Black Adam worldwide did 390 million. This was supposed to be in 2022 one of the biggest superhero movies of the year. He was going out there and he was promoting the hell out of this movie. He was ruining the movie for everyone, saying that Superman is going to be in it, which he was. You know, we got to see one last time Henry Cavill as Superman, but the movie itself wasn't great. It felt like a 90s cliche type of action movie. There were a lot of like references to Terminator 2 and like those, kind of 90s, very generic or typical action movies of the time. And it disappointed a lot of fans, and it kind of, this one started the conversation, is The Rock's ego getting a little bit too much for himself and for everybody else? Because also shortly after this, going into 2023, that's when he started reinserting himself into wrestling, and now he is one of the chairman of the WWE, and then he changed the trajectory of one of the hottest wrestlers at the time in Cody Rhodes, and he wanted to headline WrestleMania going into this year, and blah blah blah. There was major backlash on all of these things. There was reports of his behavior on set in movies, him showing up late all the time, pissing in bottles, and blah blah blah, which he recently admitted to. He had some excuse or something behind all that stuff. So you have to ask the question now, is his star power fading because of a lot of the antics that he's getting himself involved in? And not for nothing, his ego that is very fully on display, especially when he's talking about his movies and himself on social media. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be fans of The Rock all the time, and people will always go out there and support The Rock. There's a lot of women who love The Rock, right? So he's always going to have those fans. But I think for the more general movie-going audience, I think they're starting to get a little tired of his thing. And it's a shtick. If you look at all of his movies, it's usually the same shtick over and over again. And Red One looks like, and look, I have no desire in watching Red One. Red One, for me, looks terrible. It doesn't look like a good movie. That looks like a movie that probably belonged on Netflix. Now, I'm not shitting on it because I haven't seen it yet, but I just have no desire to watch it. But if you look at the box office, the numbers speak for themselves. Best way to tell a studio you don't want something is to not go and support it. And you could see not a lot of people have supported this movie at all, right? Now, DC League of Super Pets, that was a voice acting gig that he had. I think he was the Batman dog, or I don't know, he was one of those guys. It's an animated movie, so of course it's going to do decently. So you have that. Red Notice, I think that was a Netflix film, so it had barely had box office there. Free Guy, he had a brief cameo in that, so I wouldn't even count that at all. Jungle Cruise, this was the movie that he starred with Emily Blunt, and decent, 210.4 million worldwide. I'm sure Disney would have wanted this to be like a Pirates of the Caribbean, like a $500 million, $500 million movie. Didn't do that, but it's nothing to shy away from. Also, it came out in 2021, which, as you know, not a lot of people are going back to movies at that time. I think this was one of the first movies of that year, 2021, people started slowly going back to. I remember I went to it, and like I said, I fell asleep halfway through it because I thought it was boring. I couldn't even tell you what happened in the movie. I don't remember much of it. So there you go. Then, like I said, the Jumanji franchise really helped it. I mean, look at this fucking number for Jumanji. Now, this is before, pandemic and all that. Came out December 2019, right around the time of the holidays. 795.3 million worldwide. That is a crazy, insane number. Any movie, any studio would be elated, more than elated, if their movie can do this well at any time during the year. But we don't get to see numbers like this so often anymore. But we got to see that more often before. Skyscraper, that was that movie I talked about, him hanging around the building, jumping from building to building and all that shit. So you have Rampage, and you have the first Jumanji, You have Hobbs and Shaw, which was like the spin-off of all that. So he was doing decent stuff back then. Baywatch was a major bomb, a flop. I think what it is, and I think the problem that he falls into, really, is selection. I feel like he just, whatever people approach him with, he just wants to do. Why would he have done Baywatch? Did he actually think that was going to do well? That was going to be a good movie? Even if you thought it was going to be a cash grab, Baywatch? Really? In 2017? Yeah, I don't know. It's just so weird to me. But I think it's really all falls into his shtick is wearing too thin. I think people are getting a little tired of it. His movies aren't really that great overall. They're very schlocky. They're very generic. They're very typical type of movie fare, right? And I think when it comes to him hyping himself up and hyping these movies up, I think that some people are just like, hold on. You said the same shit for Black Adam, and that movie sucked. So now you're saying the same thing for Red One. I'll just wait until it's streaming. And I think more and more people, and we've seen this with not just his movies, with other people's movies too. People rather wait for it to come on streaming than go to the theater, spend what, $20 a ticket here in New York, and not to mention $10 for popcorn, another $6-7 for soda, and if you're going on a date, you add another $20 for her ticket or his ticket. You're spending almost $100 to go to the movies these days. That's why I keep saying, if you are a frequent moviegoer like I am, do take advantage of those movie passes that they offer, because that does save you a whole ton of money. But The Rock, I don't know, man. It's not looking so good for him so far. And like I said, it seems like with everything that he does, there is a certain level of backlash now happening, whether it's whatever he does on social media or stuff that he does in wrestling, or now when it comes to movies. He's not that sure thing anymore. And I think for a while, people were expecting him to be that. And he's just not that anymore. It's just really, really interesting to see this shift change. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about this, all of this stuff. Are you still a big fan of The Rock? I'm sure a lot of people are. When it comes to myself, though, I am very, very cautious on the stuff that I support The Rock on. So we'll see what happens there. All right. Jester with another comment here. I feel like if you have in your contract, you can't lose a fight. It kind of ruins the illusion of movies. Are you speaking? I see what you mean. You mean like as far as The Rock is concerned, how his characters just never seem to lose and all. Look, The Rock is the one thing that I think will also help turn things around for The Rock is for him to do more dramatic stuff, something out of his comfort zone, right? Now he is doing this A24 movie that's coming out where I think he plays like a washed out boxer or something like that. I think the moment that he can show some sort of vulnerability on screen to make him a little bit more relatable, I think people will appreciate that more. And I think he can turn things around for him. Take more of those type of roles, because every role that he takes, he's always this invincible force, right? He's this guy that is, John McClane level, Schwarzenegger level, where nothing can touch them. They can never die. They can never, get hurt. They always succeed in everything they do. And I think right now, more people are willing to root for the underdog, the one that maybe is not supposed to win and maybe doesn't at the end, right? And I feel like those type of characters more people like to get behind in these days. But when you're someone who's kind of invincible, plus you're cocky and you're corny with your delivery of certain lines, it gets tiring after a while. There's a reason why we don't see action movies like we did back in the 90s and 80s anymore. Is because they just don't really work that well anymore. People can't go behind those type of characters, can't get back behind those type of characters anymore. People prefer vulnerability, relatability. Sometimes they don't always win. And I feel like if you were to bring more characters like what we saw with the first Rambo, someone who is up against the wall, is not getting the respect or not getting treated fairly, who does what they can to take control of themselves but loses it a little bit, and then at the end gets arrested, gets put in jail, or maybe even dies. Because if you know the real story of the novel, Rambo, in the first book, he dies at the end of it, I believe, or something along those lines. And they originally filmed that in the movie, and they just felt like it wasn't right. So could you imagine if in the first movie Rambo dies right away and we never got to see any of the other future Rambo movies? But he still what he got arrested, right? And he was vulnerable. And that's the thing, like he showed that vulnerability. You know, he broke down. He was suffering from a lot of mental post-traumatic stress, and it made him relatable. And I think to this day, that's one of Stallone's greatest roles he's ever played. And of course, you have Rocky. Rocky in the first movie, he didn't win. You know, he lost, but he never gave up. And that's the thing that really, really had people be like, you know, I like this character a lot because this is a guy who's not so bright, but he has a big heart and that big determination, right? The underdog. And he never gave up. And even though he lost at the end, he never gave up. You know, and I think that's what people really like to see, especially in this type of climate that we're in now. I think a lot of people prefer to see the underdog type of storylines, the vulnerable characters. You know, at least that's just my opinion. For all I know, maybe I'm shit ass wrong, and people are just like, you know, give me some more of that. Let's bring back some of that Sly energy, some of that Schwarzenegger energy, and let's go ham. I don't know, maybe, but not for me personally. I love seeing the vulnerable side of someone who's supposed to be the shit. You know, I don't know. That's just me. I was very disappointed to see that he's no longer going to be in the Cliffhanger sequel movie. So, in my opinion, that movie just doesn't matter anymore. Why would you go see it if he's not going to be in it? You know, so anyway, that was just a news drop that I saw happened several weeks ago where he's no longer involved in the Cliffhanger sequel, which I thought that was just so weird to do in the first place, to bring back that movie and turn it into like a franchise. Even though I loved Cliffhanger, I thought that was one of his great action movies, but underrated action movie too, in my opinion. But I never thought that they would ever consider a sequel for that. Let alone, I think what was the storyline that his daughter is supposed to be in it? The character's daughter is going to be in it, so they're doing another one of those things. But the minute you lose the main character, then what's the point if he's not going to be in it? I'm not even curious to see it at all. So there you go. There you have it. All right. Why don't we get into our main topic today? And our main topic today is Star Wars news, because there's been a lot of Star Wars news movement, especially in movie news. And there's a lot of stuff that happened very like nonchalantly, without a lot of like reporting and fanfare and buzz. Disney just had their D23 event, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. You know, they had some trailer drops. There was a lot of Marvel stuff that dropped that I haven't had a chance to see yet. Some murmurs and stuff going out. But Disney also recently had their financial call, their quarterly budget call, or whatever the case they call it, their financial earnings report. And that's usually when they talk about a lot of things. So I want to first go back to this article that I read back on September 7th in regards to Star Wars movies, right? And series. So this article states or recaps the fact that Lucasfilm and Disney are only planning to possibly put out one Star Wars series per year. So, in various quarterly earnings calls over the past year or so, Disney CEO Bob Iger made it clear they had been pushing too hard and too fast with their Marvel and Star Wars divisions in terms of getting content up on the Disney Plus service. Let me share this article so you can see what I'm talking about. As a result, quality had suffered in the race to produce quantity, and so the plan has been to slow down the output of the studios. from 4 shows and 4 films a year to 2 series, not including animation, and 2 or 3 films per year. This has been most visible with Marvel Studios' TV series, where 2021 saw 4 live action series premiering, that number slipping to 3 each in 2022 and 2023, and now 2 in 2024. You have Agatha and Echo that came up this year. Now, Marvel is expected to continue that for a while, with Daredevil Born Again Season 1 and Ironheart next year. Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Wonder Man, and possibly Vision Quest in 2026. However, Star Wars on the surface have been largely unaffected by the slowdown, but that's about to change. There's a report that Lucasfilm is planning to reduce Star Wars Disney Plus output to just 1 live-action Star Wars series per year. Animated series releases aren't affected by this. So if they wanted to do like another Clone Wars or Bad Batch thing or another Visions thing, they could still do that. But when it comes to live action, just 1. Just 1. Just like the song goes, all right? That's a definite decline following the 3 shows in 2022, which was Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, and Andor Season 1, 2 shows in 23, which was Mando Season 3 and Ahsoka, and 2 shows in 24, which was The Acolyte and the up-and-coming Skeleton Crew, right? Slowdown would appear to begin with next year's second and final season of Andor being the sole release of 2025. Though Skeleton Crew will have a few episodes run into January, but that's just usually how it works. It also means the second season of Ahsoka likely won't arrive until 2026. This was seemingly confirmed the other day by actress Natasha Liu Bordozzo, who plays Sabine Wren. Appearing at DragonCon last weekend via Mandoverse update, she indicated filming on the second season is aiming to begin summer of 2025 and not late 2024 as had previously been indicated. But I think I saw rumblings that they may have started already filming Ahsoka Season 2 in the last couple of weeks. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I think there has been movement on that. The Mandalorian is bypassing a 4th season in favor of a film, which is coming out in May of 2026. This schedule suggests the second season of Ahsoka will likely release after the movie, as it simply won't be ready in time to go May, blah, 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 blah. They're working on a Lando series, which I don't think is going to happen anymore. There's just a lot of stuff happening. So, I mean, the reason why I wanted to bring up series first is because in recent years, when it comes to Star Wars, this is the only content that we've been getting was series based, and we've been getting a lot, and all various reactions and outcomes, and people with their feelings on how these series have been. Acolyte is obviously the one that kind of went so mixed and so divisive amongst the fan base, where you have a huge portion of the fan base really loving the show and supporting it every way they can. And then you have another part of the fan base, another like equal parts, that hated it and was panning it left and right. And of course, there's a sector of that fan base that's also very, how should I put it, racist and bigots, who were poo-pooing on the series because of its creator, because of its main lead actress, and their sexual proclivity, however you call that, however you pronounce that word, whatever you want to say about it. I talked about it in extensive length on this channel. I don't want to talk about it anymore because it's exhausting, but it's out there. You could see it, right? So Disney, knowing all of this that's happening, what are they going to do? Well, they went ahead and they announced that they were going to do a Rey movie. Bring back Rey. We're bringing back Rey because she deserves more movies. And that was a movie that was slated in 2026. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is coming out next year. So I think that got moved up to 2025, right? And then the Rey movie was supposed to come out in 2026. Now it's been reported that they scrapped the unannounced Star Wars movie that was supposed to come out in 2026, which is obviously the Rey movie that they were planning. Plus, there was also talks about, there was talks about the Taika Waititi movie that I think is no longer going to be happening. uh, Patty Jenkins was supposed to be, and then not, and then was possibly doing, and then probably not doing her Rogue Squadron movie, which I would have loved to see. But it was announced that they just hired a new writer, Simon Kinberg, who is very well known in Hollywood, very famous, and he's now responsible for writing a brand new trilogy of movies in the Star Wars universe. So when I heard that news drop, I was just like, "Oh, that sounds exciting! Like this could be something serious now." But then shortly after, recently, they said, "Wait a minute, guess what? We're now also going to be focusing on a new trilogy with Rey in it. Daisy Ridley, her character, Rey Skywalker, or is it Rey Palpatine? Well, whatever. However you want to call it. I think she gave herself the Skywalker name at the end of the movie. Will now be the main quote unquote Obi-Wan character in the new Star Wars trilogy that they're also working on in conjunction or alongside the Simon Kinberg trilogy. So you had a division that was lost in the dark, had no idea what they were going to do with their Star Wars franchise, movie-wise at least. They're getting notes from the top brass on the top. You got to slow down on your shows because you're putting out too much and the quality is suffering. So you need to reel that back in. Like, all right, look, we'll work with this. Instead of doing a season 4 of Mandalorian, we'll turn that into a full-length feature movie. And that will be like the first film of Star Wars that we put out in a while. It's a great way to get people back to the theaters to watch Star Wars. Everyone loves Mandalorian. Everyone loves Little Grogu, right? And that will be our test, our litmus test. How hungry are people in watching Star Wars on the big screen again? And then if all goes well, hey, guess what? We got this Rey movie coming out. But they're like, nope, halt, stop. We're not doing that anymore, right? Instead, because in 2027 now becomes a major milestone for Star Wars. Why? Because that is now the 50th anniversary of the original Star Wars movie releasing in theaters. 2027. What better way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of a beloved franchise than introducing a new trilogy for the younger generation to fall in love with, just like how my generation, the generation before me, fell in love with the OG Star Wars franchise, the OG Star Wars trilogy. And I think that's what they have in their minds right now, because it just makes perfect sense to me why they would cancel the Rey movie from 2026. They're working on this new trilogy. Now they're working on another trilogy alongside that. It's a lot of madness. It's a lot of stuff. From having nothing to now having this, whatever this is. Now, because of their track record, we don't know if they're going to continue with this. Things can change. Work in progress. You know, it's kind of like that the contract you sign whenever you get hired at a new job. It's like, you know, we have the right to terminate you at any time. You know, you are employed at will, at will employment, right? So any of these things can change or get canceled at any time they choose. It's very possible. But let's recap everything that we know so far, because it's a lot, right? So let's first start off with the Simon Kinberg story, which I thought was like a refreshing thing to hear. And it was really, really fascinating to me. So Star Wars Simon Kinberg to write, produce new trilogy for Lucasfilm. He would spearheading the launching of a new saga in the beloved galaxy far, far away. Now, this came out in earlier this month. And it already has been rumored, or there's some clarification out there that his trilogy is not the Rey trilogy. Someone else is going to be working on that, from what the rumor mill is going on about. So Simon Kinberg is heading into hyperspace, blah, blah, blah. Kinberg would spearhead the launching of a new saga in the beloved galaxy far, far away and will write the scripts for what Lucasfilm hopes would chart a brand new path forward for the sci-fi space opera universe. Lucasfilm topper and fan favorite Kathleen Kennedy will also produce the new trilogy. The new story is not meant to be a continuation of the Skywalker saga, the name of the overall arc of the popular and pop culture dominating Star Wars movie known as episodes 1 through 9. The intent here is to have brand new characters and a new story and not have it be a continuation. At least that's what the sources tell The Hollywood Reporter. But that does not mean that some characters could not or would not pop up in said trilogy. Kinberg already has strong Star Wars ties. He co-created the animated series Star Wars Rebels, which I think universally among the fan base is really beloved, with Dave Filoni as well as Carrie Beck. The Emmy-nominated ran for 4 seasons from 2014 to 18. He also helped out on the relaunch of Star Wars after Disney bought Lucasfilm, acting as consultant on 2015's The Force Awakens, which I think a lot of people would agree was the better of the 3 movies in the new trilogy. Yes, many of it was a rehash of the original movie, but still that is kind of what you wanted to get and get back into if you're doing a new set of movies, right? So, and I enjoyed it. Kinberg is an established presence as this genre space. He had a hand in the Fox's X-Men movies, being one of the producers of Logan and the first 2 Deadpool movies, among many other creative duties. And he is about to go into production on Edgar Wright's take on Stephen King's tale, The Running Man, for Paramount, which I am looking forward to. Starring Glenn Powell, Josh Brolin. When I was at New York Comic Con, this is a great story I wanted to share with you guys. When I was at New York Comic Con, one of my duties was I had to secure a signature from Josh Brolin, who was going to be there. So as I was waiting in line to meet him, news just broke. I literally got the headline on my phone that he was cast in the Running Man movie as one of the villains, if not the main villain, right? So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So I finally got up to Josh Brolin. I was like, hey, Josh, nice to meet you. I'm so much looking forward to seeing you in The Running Man. And he kind of looks at me. He's like, oh, in his very Josh Brolin-y voice. And I'm like, yeah, the headline just dropped that you're going to be cast as the villain in The Running Man. And he's like, oh, well, that's because I accidentally blurted it out earlier. And we had a good laugh about that. And he was a very nice guy and everything. And it's kind of like, I said, well, there you go. It's one of those things where you have to be careful what you say, because the minute you say something, people are going to be running out there with their articles and all that. So yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But it kind of shows you the pedigree that Simon Kinberg has. He's touched a lot of these genre-like films, and you have a right to be somewhat excited for this because of what Simon Kinberg has been able to do before. The writer-producer is one of the busiest creatives in town, and he's helping to develop the rival Star Trek franchise for Paramount, a deal he stepped into this past spring. He was due to take on an active producing role on the franchise's film side. Sources say he will maintain those duties, keeping one hand on a lightsaber and the other on a phaser. So not only is he going to be doing Star Wars, but he's also involved in Star Trek, which is mind-blowing. But also kind of makes sense because a lot of people have said that the newer Star Trek movies felt very Star Wars-like, which kind of makes sense. So it's interesting to see that he's going to be having his hands in both of the major sci-fi properties ever created, outside of Doctor Who and all that stuff. Lucasfilm had tried to chart different paths forward before. Kennedy previously signed filmmaker Rian Johnson, yes, we already know about this, to develop a trilogy, which fell apart. Also, you have the David Benioff and D.B. Weiss's Game of Thrones creators trilogy that they were supposed to be working on, which kind of fell away, kind of faded off into the sunset. The article says none of those came into fruition, and the company is facing occasional scrutiny over the years. Lucasfilm next launches TV series Skeleton Crew, which debuts next month. So that was the Simon Kinberg of it all, right? And then the rumor mill started popping up, and then my good old buddy here, well, he's not really a buddy of mine, but I've known this guy for a long time, Jeff Snyder, wanted to clear some of the rumors that he's been hearing from his sources about Star Wars. And he put this article on his website in his newsletter. And what he says is, on Thursday, with Hollywood starting to emerge from its collective post-election hangover, Disney and Lucasfilm dropped a bombshell. Simon Kinberg will write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy. Deadline report broke the news, writing that the new trilogy would be episodes 10 to 12 of the quote-unquote Skywalker saga. Deadline's own insiders disputed the trade's intel, saying that the trilogy would launch a new saga. The Hollywood Reporter backed up those insiders, saying that Kinberg's trilogy won't be episodes 10 to 12, and that it'll be a new story focused on new characters representing a new path forward for the franchise and not have it be a continuation, which is the article I just read. The clever reporter left himself an out, however, writing that doesn't mean that some characters could not or would not pop up. Again, that was covered in the article that I just read. Let me share this because I notice I'm talking to a blank slate here. So you've got Fleming in one corner and Boris on another. That's Deadline and Hollywood Reporter saying diametrically opposing things, more or less. Based on what Jeff Snyder was hearing, he's inclined to side with Deadline on this one, as I'm willing to bet that these three films will be positioned as episodes 10, 11, and 12. When the Hollywood Reporter writes that this trilogy would explore a new story focused on new characters, what else were you expecting? Lucasfilm to tell the same story with the same characters? Of course, Kinberg's trilogy will feature a new story and a bunch of new characters, but Boris left himself that out for a reason. The reason? I suspect it's because I'm hearing that Daisy Ridley will come back for these new Star Wars movies, and her Rey will be positioned as the Obi-Wan of the new trilogy. So what we're going to be finding out is that Jeff wasn't completely wrong here. All of this was going to come into fruition, but I think a lot of us were not expecting it to come out the way it came out. So what that means for Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy's movie is unclear. That she is the director that was supposed to direct the Solo Rey movie, which we all believed was supposed to be the one slated to come out in 2026, which now has been canceled. Now, those words specifically have not been used. It's just they closed out that slot for that untitled Star Wars movie to come out that year. But every one of us was speculating that was supposed to be the Rey movie. Many Star Wars skeptics assume the project is dead, but it's my understanding that Lucasfilm recently hired a new writer to replace Stephen Knight. I just haven't been able to ascertain their identity just yet. In case you didn't know, Stephen Knight is another casualty in the Lucasfilm kind of pantheon, another writer that was canceled off the project. He was supposed to be responsible for writing the script for that new Rey movie. Would Lucasfilm have paid a new writer if it had no plans to make Obaid-Chinoy's movie, knowing full well by now that Kinberg would be writing a new trilogy? You'd think not, but honestly, who knows? There's a lot of big, fragile egos in play here. Obaid-Chinoy's movie is rumored to find Ridley's Rey training a new generation of Jedi warriors. And if my source is accurate, then it sounds like she'd be serving a similar function in Kinberg's trilogy. Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan served as a mentor to Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker before guiding him as a Force ghost. I think, which makes me wonder if Obaid-Chinoy's movie will ultimately come to fruition. The optics certainly wouldn't be good if Lucasfilm pulled the plug on Obaid-Chinoy's project at this point. Well, that hasn't stopped them in the past, because they've done that multiple times before. But you also have to wonder how many movies we need with Ridley's Rey, an older version of whom is also rumored to be part of Sean Levy's vision of his Star Wars movie. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Sean Levy, the guy who was responsible for Deadpool, the Deadpool movies, and for episodes of Stranger Things, was also slated to write his own Star Wars movie. I don't know where that's going to go now, or if that's going to be put on the back burner because of all this other news that came out. But you have that to also think about. Regardless of whether or not Obaid-Chinoy's movie ultimately gets made, it's being developed as a standalone spin-off of the Skywalker saga, not one of the franchise's official episodes. Yet it's the episodes that audiences have flocked to see in theaters, and I imagine it's the episodes to which Lucasfilm will eventually return. Because in Hollywood, sooner is always better than later. As far as the bigger picture goes, I think this is Lucasfilm's Kathleen Kennedy and Disney's Bob Iger making one last big Star Wars push before they exit their post next year. And I know Kennedy hasn't formally said anything, but I fully expect her to step down once she has charted a course for the future of the franchise. This tracks too because there's a lot of articles and movement as to who's going to be Iger's replacement. There's a lot of talk about that because remember, Bob Iger came back only temporarily. He's not supposed to be the main guy at Disney for the long run. He had to come in and step in for Chapek, who was destroying Disney and a lot of their properties and all that. Remember, it was Chapek, the one who pushed everyone to put all of this content on Disney Plus, and that's where we got what we have now. So there's a lot of push and a lot of movement to see who's going to replace Iger in his position. And Kathleen Kennedy stepping down won't be a surprise to me because look, she's made her money, she's done her thing. It's not going to become because of fan backlash and all those things. It's just because I think she wants to do other stuff. Remember, she's been a producer in Hollywood for ages at this point. You know, she's worked with Spielberg back in the 80s and 90s and all that. She's touched so many different stuff, so many properties. I'm sure she wants to do stuff outside of Star Wars and Lucasfilm for a change. And I won't be surprised if that's going to be her reasoning for stepping down. I don't know why they turned to Kinberg, whose track record is hit and miss, and who has also been tasked with resurrecting a moribund Star Trek franchise. Will the two sci-fi franchises share Kinberg as they once did J.J. Abrams? And will Kinberg make a play to direct the first film just as George Lucas did before handing the reins of sequels The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi to other filmmakers? Personally, I doubt that Kinberg will wind up directing a Star Wars movie, but I do wonder if Lucasfilm will have trouble filling the gig, given the company's track record when it comes to this franchise, which some consider to be a bigger headache than it's worth. So that was the initial reaction and rumor mill after the Kinberg announcement. Are you ready for this? Because if you didn't know yet, you're about to find out. On November 12th, Star Wars movies race for Rey and the future of the franchise on the big screen. The scavenger turned Jedi, played by Daisy Ridley in the last 3 episode movies, is key to space opera's next turn. Forget about the Death Star. The most coveted weapon in the Star Wars movie arsenal is the character of Rey Skywalker. Who knew? Since the November 7 reveal that Simon Kinberg had signed on to develop and write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy for Lucasfilm and Disney, debate has focused on whether or not it would be a continuation of the so-called 9-film Skywalker saga, tying it to the legacy of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and storylines first laid out by George Lucas in 1977. All right. Some fans have expressed criticism that Lucasfilm would return to the well-to-make episodes, as they are called, beyond the 9 movies that comprise the Skywalker story, which has been billed as concluding with 2019 Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. That film grossed $1 billion globally, but also wasn't received well by much of the fan base. It received a B+ grade from audiences polled by CinemaScore and a 51% critics tally on Rotten Tomatoes. But Rey, the scavenger turned Jedi, played by Daisy Ridley in the last 3 episode movies, is key to the franchise's next turn. That potentially puts Kinberg's trilogy story development as early in its conceptual stages as it may be on a collision course with the Rey standalone movie that is actively in the works with director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. That feature revealed with fanfare in April 2023 at Star Wars Celebration in London is to star Ridley and could have already been in production were it not for some unanticipated headwinds, with writers rotating around more than R2-D2's Chrome Dome. A new writer search is underway, so it's unclear when that one would go. Again, this is to talk about them letting go of Stephen Knight, who was supposed to be writing the new Rey movie. Perhaps that is why Lucasfilm was receptive to Kinberg's multi-story pitch. Anything to move Rey forward, but it does engender rumors in the Star Wars underground of filmmakers jostling for characters. Ridley, for her part, told The Hollywood Reporter, "I feel like the new ones will be so interesting. Time has passed and a lot has changed for me personally. So it'll be interesting to come back to someone who I know so well, but in such a different moment. While insiders dispute the notion that there is a battle for Rey, there definitely is internal deliberation within Lucasfilm as to what to do with the heir to the Skywalker next. She is the most valuable cinematic asset, in some ways, maybe the only one Star Wars has right now. One source close to the franchise tells The Hollywood Reporter. That scares me. That concerns me because that, in my opinion, should not be the case. But anyway, Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian and the Yoda-like Grogu are Disney Plus creations that will have their big screen power tested with a feature directed by Jon Favreau releasing in 2026. So that is releasing in 2026. Okay, so 2025, we will still have no new Star Wars movie. All right. According to sources, Rey is set to play a role in several movies that are being developed, although which ones remains unclear. Star Wars movie development has been under scrutiny for several years, with Lucasfilm head Kathleen Kennedy taking fire for not developing meaningful characters beyond those first created by Lucas prior to the sale to Disney in 2012 for $4 billion. And if the franchise looks forward in its canon timeline, all those beloved characters, Luke, Leia, Vader, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Han, are dead or had their storylines wrapped in prequels or spin-offs. Rey, created in the post-Lucas era, is arguably the only entity with currency on the big screen now. The closest is a little bear, says another source. But that's worrisome too, don't you think? When you have a main character that's supposedly the linchpin in this whole universe that no one, I wouldn't, let me rephrase that. Not no one, but hardly anyone. No, let me rephrase that again. That certain people within the fan base couldn't care less for. You know, I think it was a mixed emotion when they said that they were going to come back doing another Rey movie. You know, some people loved it, and there are a lot of people that were like, really? This is where you're going? And I have to be one of those people included in it, because I thought that was a weird announcement to make and a weird trajectory to go forward with. Who knows? But maybe they have something in their analytics, something in their like kind of things that they've gathered that says Rey is the character you should be focusing on. She tracks well with certain demographics and certain groups, you know? So maybe that's why. I don't know. It's all very baffling and interesting to me. So what the Kinberg hiring lays bare is that development of movies at the company remains its own unique ecosystem in Hollywood and its own shit show, if you ask me. There are numerous Star Wars movies being developed that overlap characters or timelines. They are not related, but whatever one were to come out first could, in a domino effect, impact the ones after it. James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi movie that takes place long before the Skywalkers may be one of the exceptions. Again, that's another movie that's in the talks about James Mangold doing his own Star Wars movie. There's just so many people attached to doing a Star Wars movie. And the fact that they're now thinking of doing this trilogy or these two trilogies maybe, it's just bonkers to me. It just shows me that they have no idea where to go from here. And they're just trying their best to do whatever they can to reinvigorate the Star Wars movies moving forward. Especially since they've been pretty much dictated and told not to do as many shows on Disney Plus anymore. So where's all that storytelling going to go? They're hoping it's going to transfer well into the big screen format. Some Lucasfilm directors are aware of what others are working on, while others are not. For instance, Taika Waititi is working on the Star Wars movie. Sean Levy has a feature project in the works, and Donald Glover's Lando idea has moved over development from the TV to the film side of Lucasfilm. A Rogue Squadron project is also still in development as a feature. I think all of these, Rogue Squadron, Lando, the Taika Waititi movie, I think all of that eventually is going to be dead in the water. I don't think we're going to be hearing anything from that. I also think that Sean Levy still has a potential, but whatever this new trilogy is that they come out with, I guarantee you Sean Levy is probably going to be the go-to director for that. That's just my speculation, of course, but I think that's what's going to eventually happen. Quote, it's a different way of development, says another insider familiar with the company's way of working. There's so much parallel work going on. It also points to the unique nature of Star Wars To fans, and in this case, filmmakers and producers, it is not a brand or a franchise, but something akin to a religion. Unlike Marvel or DC, with decades of stories propelling them forward, or even Harry Potter, with 7 fleshed out books, Star Wars at its core has been the original George Lucas movies, and nothing has been codified or been made more canonical in modern times than those 3 movies. To filmmakers and executives, the first trilogy is the Old Testament. Quote, "You're being asked to create the New Testament," adds one source who worked on previous movies, "and no one can agree on anything, and there's a lot of second guessing about meanings." It's kind of like all the different books that came out after the Bible and all the different like takes on stuff that was covered in the Bible, and you have, the book of this and the book of that and all that kind of stuff like that. It does really feel like religion at this point, and it's kind of crazy and scary to think about. Another source familiar with the process is more business minded, noting Star Wars is a nostalgia based enterprise, and they are running out of ways to create nostalgia. The television side doesn't appear to have these problems, as several insiders note. That arm has a lot more freedom to expand Lucas's universe, which is why there's been a varied slate that runs the gamut, for better or worse, in the eyes of fans, from Andor, season 2 arrives next April, to The Acolyte, not getting a season 2, as well as a corner for Ahsoka creator Dave Filoni, the chief creative officer at Lucasfilm. Adds an insider, quote, "To make standalone movies or continuing the Skywalker saga in any form is a fundamental question the company faces as it tries to move forward." So there you go. So those are the articles that kind of try to help explain all of these stuff that's happening with Star Wars. The current rumor mill right now is going off of the idea that, and what I alluded to earlier, that there's going to be 2 potential trilogies happening at the same time that they're working on. There is the Kinberg one that's not supposed to touch any of the Rey, the Skywalkers, all that stuff. It's supposed to be a brand new trilogy to start anew. And there's this whatever trilogy that Daisy Ridley and Rey is going to be a part of. My speculation is that the 2 will eventually become one. And maybe to the dismay of Kinberg, maybe to the dismay of other people involved in Star Wars right now, who is slated to direct a certain Star Wars movie or not, I think they will turn into this one trilogy. That's going to be the direction. Because having 2 trilogies going alongside each other is too much for them right now. And a lot of it's also going to be based off of how well the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is going to do. If it does good to great, then awesome. Maybe, you know what? Let's test the waters of maybe doing 2 trilogies. Let's see. If it's mediocre to, could have been better. All right, let's stick to the one. And let's stick to the one that we know is going to create buzz and we're going to get people to go see. And that's probably going to end up becoming the Daisy Ridley Rey trilogy or whatever that is. So the way I look at it this way is that I think the 2 will eventually become one. Simon Kinberg will be the J.J. Abrams and writing a treatment for how the trilogy is supposed to pan out. If he's smart, and if Lucasfilm will allow him to do so, he's going to give it the Kevin Feige treatment. Movie 1, do this. Has to hit this point, and end like this. Number 2, that has to be met. We need to go to this trajectory and all that. Ends like this. In order for us to get to 3, this needs to happen because of everything that happened here and here in movies 1 and 2, right? It kind of reminds me of a video that's floated around a lot is the Trey Parker, Matt Stone video of them talking about how to write scripts and all that, and how there's a certain cause and effect of how to write stories, and that stories that will work well and that will grab and capture audiences. It's not so much that you have to do this to do this, do this to do that. You have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get to this. And that's what you have to play out, right? So I think if Kinberg is smart enough to work with Lucasfilm and lay it out that way, that's exactly what's going to happen. As far as directing is concerned, Chinoy is probably going to end up maybe directing one of those movies in the trilogy. Whether it's the first one or second one, Who knows? But since she is so heavily involved in the Rey movie, the standalone, they'll probably have her direct the first movie in the trilogy. Sean Levy, I'm sorry, but instead of your treatment of what you want to do, how about you direct, episode 2 of this new trilogy, right? Again, maybe to the dismay or whatever, or maybe it's going to be a one for you, one for me kind of thing. It's like, all right, I'll direct episode 2 as long as I still can do my standalone. Sure, why not? Yeah. Well, let's see how you do with episode 2 first. Let's not get ourselves into another Rian Johnson situation, right? So that's probably what's going to happen there. Episode 3, who knows? Debatable. I also agree. I don't think Kinberg's going to end up directing any of these movies. The Taika Waititi movie is not going to happen. The James Mangold movie will probably still happen, but it's all going to depend on how well the Mandalorian and Grogu movie is received. And if the first movie of this new trilogy is received well as well. I think it's all going to be dependent on all those things. The Patty Jenkins stuff, not going to happen anymore. Rian Johnson stuff, not going to happen anymore. A lot of these like standalone things that were supposed to happen, not going to happen. I think right now, Lucasfilm and in their best interest should mainly focus on whatever this new trilogy is, that whatever it is they're working on. And then that's it. And, put all the focus and attention on that and see where it goes. If it works well, it works well. If it doesn't, well, back to the good old drawing board, right? But it is very, very interesting to see them make this type of headway and to make all of these announcements, bomb after bomb, really. But it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen. But we still have to wait another year. 2025, no Star Wars movies will be out. So we have to wait till 2026 for Mandalorian and Grogu. But like I said, 2027 makes perfect sense. Because what better way to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Wars than to introduce a brand new trilogy into the universe, into the whole Star Wars ecosystem. And whether or not it's going to be a fresh trilogy or one with a familiar face like Rey Skywalker, it's yet to be seen, but it's going to be interesting. And whether it will crash and burn or it'll be a huge hit, that's going to be the fun and excitement of it all. So we'll see what happens there. But I'm very curious as to what a lot of you think about this, all of this stuff happening with Star Wars and what's going to happen moving forward with the franchise. I think they're still going to do really well when it comes to series. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Skeleton Crew when it comes out. When it comes to Disney Plus, it's true what they say. They have freedom to just do whatever they want. They don't necessarily have to do series based off of anything and has to tie to anything, really, if they wanted to. Skeleton Crew, I don't think is going to tie much into anything that we already know. So that's going to be an interesting test to see what happens. Now, if they try to force it into kind of connecting to something, then I think it's going to be very obvious when they do that. And that may turn off a lot of the people, a lot of the fan base once again. But who knows? I mean, The Acolyte, honestly, I didn't hate it. Same time, I also didn't love it. I just thought it was hilarious that they went so hard on that show as they did to introduce new Jedi lore, to tease us with Plagueis, and then only to have it really just go nowhere. As far as we know, because of the backlash, because of the negativity around it, I just think it's such a wasted moment in time. It's like how I felt when I watched Venom: Last Dance. I watched that movie and I felt it was like a waste of my time because the story didn't go anywhere. It didn't push the needle in anything. It didn't make me love the characters any more than I kind of did already, which is not much to begin with. And it was just like, okay, you're going to end it this way? It's like, what did I just watch this movie for to begin with? Maybe that's just me. But you'll know as you get older, time is very important. Time is money. Time is life. And I don't have time to waste on things that just don't mean anything anymore. That's why I'm so behind on TV. That's why I'm so behind on certain movies, because some movies I just look at it and like, I don't think I should watch that movie because I don't think it's going to be good or entertaining or whatever. You know, that's why nowadays you'll hear me talk more about independent movies and movies that you see at festivals and all that, because those are the ones that really have a great story to tell. A lot of these like MCU stuff, DC stuff. Now I'm looking forward to the new Superman. Don't get me wrong, but I'm very hesitant nowadays when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, because a lot of it has been very disappointing. And it's not fatigue, because I'm still always giddy and excited when I hear about, oh, they're gonna make a movie about this, make a movie about that. You know, this person is cast to be this. I'm like, all right, let's see. I'm still very much excited for Fantastic Four, but I am very, hesitant now walking into these things. You know, I'm bracing for impact in case it becomes something that I'm like, oh no, what did you do? I'm very cautious with those things. And I don't see myself get like that when I watch other movies. I walked into Conclave not knowing much about it, but knowing the pedigree of actors involved in it. I was like, wow, goddamn, this was a freaking great movie. You know, I watched Honora, had no idea what it was. I know who Sean Baker is. I know him as a director. I've loved his past movies, even though some of them are kind of controversial. And this movie blew my mind. You know, and maybe that's just a sign of age or a sign of like taste changing in time and all that. But to this day, I can pop in the original Star Wars movies and it'll bring me back to being a kid again. Like, oh man, these movies are so much fun to watch. You know, Deadpool and Wolverine is now out on Disney Plus, so more and more people can find. I just spoke to a friend on the phone the other day who hasn't seen it at all. And now that it's on Disney Plus, he finally had a chance to watch it and he loved it. You know, it's like, oh my God, that was so entertaining, so cute, so fun. And I still get that enjoyment from those type of movies. But when it hurts me to see studios and companies lose their way and just don't, they just have no idea what to do with such strong properties, such strong properties like Star Wars and what Marvel has done recently. You know, it's painful to see that happening because they have it all there in front of them. They have the comic books laid out, all those stories laid out, all the possibilities of what to do. I think they just went too nuts and they lost their way. And I'm hoping now that they're having a chance to regroup, you know, restructure themselves. I'm hoping now we can move forward and it's not going to be so much of quantity. And the focus is really going to be on quality moving forward. You know, and I'm hoping that now with the new batch of Marvel movies that we get, the DC movies we're going to get starting next year, the shows that we're going to get, Daredevil Born Again, I'm so hyped up for. Now I'm hoping we're going to start seeing that effect of the quality coming back. Or you'll see me here 1 year from now shitting on everything that I just saw because guess what? They didn't learn their lessons.
Wow.
Yeah!
And then we're back to square one again. You know, anything can happen. But that's just my opinion, my take on it all. So, but I am very curious as to what all of you think out there, how things are going to be moving forward. Are you excited for the new Star Wars stuff based off all the news that they just put out there? Are you looking forward to the future of the MCU? James Gunn's DC coming soon? You know, what's your anticipation level? I would love to hear all that stuff. But I think that's going to be it for me for today, guys. I am, it's funny when you don't do this for a while, you don't realize how much of a strain it is on you when it comes to just talking nonstop for 2 hours or so. Um, but Jester has, I want to read your comment here. You just chimed in. Marvel wise, I feel like Thunderbolts and Brave New World will bring them back, but I think Doomsday will bring them down again. You know, I hate to say that I agree because again, they have such great potential, but I think that's the fear, right? You know, like Thunderbolts looks interesting, you know, and that could bring the fun back, you know, because you have such an eclectic group of characters. You know, in essence, this is the Marvel Suicide Squad. So that looks like that could be entertaining. Brave New World, I don't know. It's hard for me to want to be like 100% like yes, because the way that Captain America and the Winter Soldier series left off, it felt a little hokey, just a little bit. You know, I could be proven wrong, and I'm always going to be rooting for them. So we'll see. But with however they treat this whole RDJ coming back as Doom, the way they treat it, I think it's going to speak volumes as to how things are going to be moving forward. Again, I my big thing is that the Fantastic Four has a lot riding on it right now. That movie needs to be brilliant because you have, you know, push Thunderbolts aside, push Brave New World aside. Yes, you have your fan bases looking forward to that. I think collectively, all of us are looking forward to Fantastic Four and whenever the X-Men come in. If you F up Fantastic Four, I think in a lot of people's minds, that's it. There's no fate in Marvel moving forward because you got to nail Fantastic Four. They're such a major part of the MCU. Without them, there's so many storylines they cannot really fully tell. I'm sure they'll find ways to. But for like that diehard comic book fan, you can't do it. You have to have, you know, the first family of comics in there. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, just saying, I mean, they're paying Robert Downey Jr. $100 million. The budgets can be $500 million. Probably there's no way they can make back that money. Not in today's landscape. Not with the way people are going to movies these days. You know, unless somehow they find a brilliant way to build up to it. You know, find a way to find that same magic they found with phase 1s and 2s and 3s, building up to the whole Thanos Infinity War, Infinity, you know, Endgame kind of thing. If they could find their way to get back into that, then there's still a lot of potential. But things are moving too fast and things are coming too soon. You know, what is the RDJ movie supposed to be in 2027, 28? That's not a lot of time to build up to something, in my opinion. So I don't know. If I were Marvel, if I was Kevin Feige right now, I would take my sweet ass time. You know, let's build up to things. Because we also have a slew of Disney Plus series coming out next year. You know, you have Daredevil, you have Ironheart. They teased Wonder Man in one of the sizzle teasers that they put out there. Right? That's already 3. You got What If, the last season of What If. Yes, it's animated and it doesn't really play into canon and all that, but still, it's Marvel, right? I mean, what else do they got out there? I feel like there's one other show that I'm missing that they're working on. Armor Wars. Now, I don't know, are they moving that to a feature film or are they still doing a series on that? Who knows, right? And then the Wakanda show that they were talking about. What's going to happen with that? It's just a lot. You know, it's a lot. And like I said, I'm always rooting for them because I've always been a Marvel fan since I was a kid. You know, but I'll tell you this. If James Gunn and DC can find a way to knock Superman out of the park, and if Creature Commandos is fun and exciting, they're in a position right now to potentially take over Marvel when it comes to movies and feature films in the future, in the near future. And I won't be surprised if that comes into fruition. It's a tough challenge on their part because DC was already a hot mess when James Gunn took it over. That's why he had to kind of just reboot the whole thing. But if he's planning it right, and James Gunn has a good mind for these things. Look how he planned out the whole Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I think he did a really good job with that. If he can nail this right now for DC, a year or two from now, we could be talking about how DC is better than Marvel. It's a very strong possibility, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But let me head on out for now, guys. It's been a pleasure. I'm very happy to be back here. Again, I will be back once a week, every Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, with the morning afternoon live show. And as always, before I go, I'd like to give a shout out to Jester. I'm so happy. I finally had a chance to catch up with you on here. AKB, always a pleasure. Kevin Davis, with your stats and analytics. I always love chatting with you about that stuff. Cersei666, I love the opening comment before I went live. Thank you for that. For anyone else who I haven't had a chance to say hi, or any of you who were lurking behind the scenes, it's a pleasure to be back, with you. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. As always, like I said, I have a lot of content that I've just been sitting on. Right now, if you go into my editor, I have 3 videos that I'm currently editing concurrently that I just have to find the time to just buckle in and finish up. So I hope to have that released very soon. Also, by the way, do you like my new Jaws print here? I picked this up at Baltimore Comic Con. And the reason why I loved it so much, I know it's kind of foggy right now, but it's sheet music of the soundtrack, of the theme song. But they put the movie poster on top of it. And I thought it was such a brilliant concept that I just had to get it. One of the most iconic soundtracks of all time when it comes to movies. So yeah. I'm tired, guys. All right, everyone. I will catch you next week. And as always, until then, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe, and I will catch all of you in the next one. Peace out, everybody. Bye.